this is like our not Johnny Appleseed, but this is like Japanese ghost stories or vampires, werewolves of Europe and stuff. Even though they purport that this actually happened, but you got to take it with a grain of salt because there's a lot of things they report that happened that you could go back in the history. It's like there's no substantial report of or substantial evidence of this actually happening. But yeah, the farmer John Bell, which we'll get into in the story, did die mysteriously, but people blame that it was a ghost because this is the only purported story that a ghost actually killed somebody. That's what also makes it kind of popular.
And it was pushed by somebody who was already a respectable enough author, right?
Yeah, it was pushed by the family. It's pushed by the family and the people that tell that they experienced this phenomenon on this property. They're the ones that are pushing. They're the ones that were, because they're not with us anymore, that this had happened. And there's different versions of like, did this happen or did this happen or did this happen? But mainly they keep it like this phenomenon happened during this period of time. These people experienced it, and it ended up that John Bell, one of the main characters of the story, was mysteriously died, and that this spirit, entity, demonic, what people want to call it, took credit for it.
Right.
So, and there's like other people, people who research the story who add other tidbits to it too. Like there's supposedly there's some sort of connection between the Bell Witch and the Mothman, a story I've done earlier.
And, I remember the Mothman.
Yeah, and God, what was the Kelly Hopkinsville incident? You've heard that? We've done an episode on that. Not me,
yes,
but you've heard that story because supposedly it's on one particular fault line going across the southern United States. It's not, you can't prove it, but people's like, oh, this happened here in West Virginia, this happened in Tennessee, this happened in Kentucky, and they gotta be linked somehow. What? Like, one is a crypto, UFO, whatever, another one's a ghost story, and this one is a UFO, particularly UFO alien encounter. But yeah, I mean, it's because everyone wants to fit their own, have their own Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
All this stuff's got to be linked, or the fact that Andrew Jackson, who we'll talk about when we get into the story, comes up in the story. They're like, they just throw everything at this thing. I mean, there's some elements that might be true, but you can't take everything and just say, oh, all this is true.
Right. And just in case anybody's wondering, we do have a mention of at least one Black person.
Yeah.
In terms of the story, you got old Slave Dean.
Yeah, there's Slave Dean and slavery and
it's the time. It's the time.
Yes, the stuff they don't want. They want to talk about. Everything was nice and great back then.
Jesus.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. One, people owned other people. Two, there was no electricity. This is three. You could die from diarrhea.
Okay. And you can't get much worse than those three. I tell you what.
Yep.
The dying of diarrhea, I think, has to only because of the slavery does the dying of diarrhea stay number 3 there.
Yes. I mean, there was a point in time where if during that time, if people farted, could be their last fart on this earth.
Oh my gosh. Like either they could die or they could be killed because the fart itself will be a ghost. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot could happen. A lot could go on.
But yeah, let's get into the story.
Let's get into
it. The Bell Witch before we go on this long diatribe on how flatulence killed people in the Old West. We don't want to do that.
It's a murderer. To this day, it's still a murderer.
Yes. Whoever smelt it dealt it.
With death.
Yes. Yes, but the Bell Witch haunting is we're taking the story from various sources just to let people know, newspaper articles, online, stuff like that. But the Bell Witch or the Bell Witch haunting is a legend from southern United States folklore centered on the 19th century Bell family of northwestern Robinson County, Tennessee. The farmer and head of the family, John Bell Sr., reside with his family along the Red River in the area currently near the town of Adams. And according to the story, between 1817 and 1821, his family in the local area became under attack by a mostly invisible entity that was able to speak, affect the physical environment, and shapeshift. Some accounts record the spirit has also been clairvoyant and capable of crossing long distances at superhuman speeds to be able to tell what's going on in a different area. And the story really became prominent in 1894 when a newspaper editor, Martin V. Ingram, published his authenticated history of the Bell Witch. The book is highly regarded as the first full-length record of the legend and the primary source of the significant treatments. The individuals recorded in the work are known historical personalities. In modern times, some skeptics have regarded the Ingram efforts as an historical fiction, and most researchers consider Ingram's work to be folklore study and an accurate reflection of the belief of the region between the 19th century. So we're going to get into the actual legend and the story that gets in, what had happened, the main characters of the story, people who came in that claim that they experienced these attacks and what had happened afterwards. So you want to start any thoughts of what you have from hearing that first part?
Oh, it's it's interesting, right? Because you have this family who, they have, I guess during that time, and what's the word? And an okay source of income, right? They have these kids, they have this home, they own people, and
Right.
they own a couple people, so they have some money, and you have this thing happening. You have the every family member is encountered by something that they don't recognize. It's a couple of different types of animals. It's a bird, it's a dog. It's another little kid, right? One of the daughter sees, another little girl swinging on a tree,
Right.
and so this spirit is bringing itself out, and it's really, really interesting. So, and the another area of interest I have actually comes later in the story, but just this entity making itself known by everybody was a particular interest to me in the beginning.
Right.
Because they had a plan.
Yeah, and especially when you hear the story, because this is one of the first ghost stories I've come across, and I've become so interested in. It's not the first ghost story that I come across. I'm saving that one for this coming Halloween. That purported to be fact, and what also that fascinates me about this so much is the fact that there is so many purported witnesses. Now, we've told stories on here about people who experienced some unknown phenomenon, and there was many people to witness it. Travis Walton, the Hopkinsville Kelly incident, Tinley Park, UFO sightings, etc., etc., etc. And they're backed by some of them are backed by some sort of proof or some sort of, like, you have a hard time to proving the evidence they bring up. This one is just word of mouth.
Mm.
And that's what kind of makes it fit under folklore for me. I mean, that you can't prove that this actually happened.
Right.
And a lot of people would say, like, yeah, we can't prove this actually happened at all. But so many people believe that this actually happened, and the fact that there's still some sort of residual haunting that's going on near the property at this Bell Witch Cave, we'll get to at the end of the story. But so many people, but it's like a lot of things. So many people believe in that you have no proof. It's the current times we live in right now.
Right.
But it's still a very interesting story, and even if it's not real, it's, hey, this is early American folklore, because we don't have that much history here,
and the story itself leaves a lot of, maybe we can say, assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, we're going to talk a little bit more, but just I guess in terms of the most original format of the story, who had a particular affection to, who she had particular dislike for, what happened towards the end. It's that I found the most interesting. It was like, seems to be a message here, and then there's a kind of another version of it, and that other version almost seemed to try to take away from I guess what could be considered the first version of the story. I'm not sure if there were just multiple versions when the main theory of the story came out. But I found all that interesting. It seems like something was trying to be said, but maybe it wasn't the time to say it.
Right. There's everyone's pretty much, every historian and or folklorists are pretty much set on how the story began, but they're not why this was affecting this family, and that's what gets confusing on, and there's multiple different reasons why they pointed out. I can tell you one of the main reasons we can point to is absolutely fiction. And I have the evidence to prove that it's absolutely fiction on what was the main purpose of that story. But we'll get into it the way we get in the story. So let's start off talking about pretty much this family. In the early 1800s, John Bell moved his family from North Carolina to the Red River Bottomland in Robinson County, Tennessee, settling in the Red River community, which later became what's now known today as Adams, Tennessee. Bell purchased some of the land in a large house for his family. Over the next several years, he acquired more land, increasing his holdings to 328 acres, and cleared a number of fields for planting. He also became an elder of his church, the Red River Baptist Church. John was joined by his wife, Lucy Bell, and they had 3 more children after moving to Tennessee. The Bells had a very happy and successful early life in Red River settlement. So the strangeness begins. One day in 1817, John Bell was inspecting his cornfield when he encountered a strange-looking animal sitting in the middle of a corn row. He was shocked by the appearance of this animal, which had the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit.
Yikes.
Bell shot at it several times, and the animal vanished. Right. This is the first documented manifestation of the entity. Bell thought nothing more of the incident, at least until not after dinner. That evening, the family began hearing beating sounds from outside the walls of their log cabin home. The mysterious sounds continued with increased frequency and force each night. John Bell and his sons, often hurried outside to catch the culprit, but was always returned empty-handed. In the weeks that followed, the Bell children began waking up frightened, complaining that the rats were gnawing at their bedpost. Not long after that, the children began complaining of having their bed covers pulled from them and their pillows tossed onto the floor by a seemingly invisible entity. The entity allegedly turned a man into a mule.
Okay.
So that's how it started. He shot at this weird thing reported from the legend, and it had the body of a dog, head of a rabbit. That that's
Unique.
okay.
It's
Yeah,
very unique.
and then it became